It's May 8th, 2019, and we're here today to speak with Mr. Guido Borella about his career in the United States Army during World War II. Guido, how are you today?
I'm fine. I'm always fine.
That's great. That's great. Guido, could you give us a brief history of where you were born and where you went to school before you went in the Army?
I was raised on 56th Street on the east side in Manhattan, and I went to St. John's Parochial School in a block away, and I can always remember my family came from Italy, right? And we hardly spoke English yet, etc. So I went into when I was in the school there, and they asked a question. I answered Italian, and because a lot of people would be this, etc. I had no problem with that, you know. I'm on a learning curve, and anyway, then I went to, in 52nd Street they had the Kipsay Boys Club, where we went, etc. They had a swimming pool, they had everything, etc. for the kids, and anyway, they also taught some artwork and some woodwork, etc. But I always had vision, so I took the artwork. And I just loved going there to do artwork. We did plants and all kinds of drawings, etc. And I didn't realize that they sent one of my drawings to John Wanamaker, which was one of the something like Macy's, etc. And all of a sudden, I got gold medal, and I didn't know anything about it. And I said, that didn't deserve that. So anyway, when the nuns found out I could draw, etc., make me a poster for this, make me a poster for that, etc. And then went to high school. The nuns chose my high school for commercial art. And so anyway, I had a great life that way. And when I finished high school, I went to work in a pastry shop, and right off Fifth Avenue, they made the finest pastries. Anyway, and I was doing good. But when September came, I started in Pratt Institute to learn commercial art, etc. And I did that in the evenings, etc. So the next thing was then December 7th came, etc. And they bombed Pearl Harbor. When they bombed Pearl Harbor, I dropped everything. I went to work for the company that I wound up with, etc. They made the small blades for the aircraft engine because we only had the process to do it. And so I started off with $12 a week, and time and a half overtime. And every other week we broke the barriers, how many blades we made, etc. And every other week I got a raise. In 10 months, I was making $26 a week, bringing home, and with time and a half overtime, I was bringing home to $35 more than my father. But at that time, I said, what am I doing here? So my best friend who worked with me, etc., I said to him, let's join the service, you know. So we both went down to the Marine Corps. They threw us both out. Went to the Navy. They said, well, you come back in 2 weeks, you might pass, etc. Told my friends, you can't do that, etc. So then we said, oh, let's go to the Army. The Army takes everybody. And so we get down to right in Manhattan, etc. We went in, and we went through the whole system, etc. And then one of the people who checked out, etc. We went through an eye chart, right? And I passed the eye chart, no problem. And he went through. All of a sudden, the doctor says, "Well, change the chart." He couldn't read it. He had memorized it. So all of a sudden, I'm the only one that passed by. So the next morning, Friday morning, we go to work, and I told him that, etc. And anyway, I said, "Can I get paid this week, etc." And the woman just says, "You gotta, we'll pay you next week. You gotta work like everybody else." So somebody went there. I got paid off. But the other thing is, this was Thursday night when we, and I expected to get some time off, right? So the sergeant said, or I said to him, he said, you show up here Friday morning, you're in the Army." And that's how I got into the Army.
This was October of 1942?
Yeah.
And you were just 20 years old?
Yeah, I was almost 20.
Almost 20,
Yeah.
in October 42. Great. And then where did you get your basic training?
Got basic training in Fort Dix, and then we went out to Kentucky with the Camp Campbell, Kentucky, which is Fort Campbell today, and we started going through, and then we go in there. All of a sudden, there's a sergeant there. Said, "You go take that table. You could be in infantry. You could be." So I said, "Do you have any engineering?" And he said, "Good luck. Go right there with the combat engineers." It wasn't that great. Anyway, but I want to learn something, etc. So we had basic training, and we looked out that most of our non-coms came from the
Was it the CCC?
Some of the Corps in the West Building. Anyway, so and they could do anything. They had all the equipment. They could blow things, etc. When the lieutenants used to try and teach us something, they knew more about it than he did. So we lucked out that way, and then the training we got is to build bridges and stuff like that, and the problem was the thing was, how fast can you build it? So we had 3 combat commands. So we had 3 engineering companies, right? And we used to go on training, etc. Who could build it the fastest? Because that's important, etc. And one time we went through it, and B Company brought it, beat us, etc. And that's how we learned how to build bridges. Then we also learned about explosives, how to take them, what to do with them, etc. Then after a year or so, we were transferred. We went to Camp Fannin in Texas, and from there we learned a lot more about fighting, a lot more about driving at night with 2 little lights in the front of it, and because speed was so important, so when you broke through, you had to go real fast, and that worked out very well for us later. Anyway, and since we're in Texas, we thought we're going to go to the Far East. Because the summertime there was it was too hot, etc. So all of a sudden we went to New York, bought a Navy ship, and went to England.
You had over a year's training to be an engineer.
No, 2 years.
Of training?
Yeah.
Wow.
1 year in Kentucky, 1 year there. And so I feel we were very well trained. Mm-hmm. So we went there, and then we landed in England. And the reason why you landed in England, that's why you had to pick up equipment. You couldn't just go over there without, any old way. and my first taste of war was when I went to London for over a weekend, right? They allowed us one weekend for over there. We get there, and the V-bombs came through. So all the time we spent there was in the subway.
Did you see any of them land?
Yeah. But one thing I remember also is the first thing I had fish and chips. Yeah, fish and chips. They do it, and they put it in a paper in a newspaper, etc. And I never tasted fish and chips that way anytime. So it came time then when we were ready to go. So all equipment we checked it all out, etc., etc. So we were well, etc. So the next thing, so when we landed on Le Havre. In Le Havre, we raced all the way through to where the fighting was, etc., and near the German border, etc. And anyway, oh, by the way, one thing, if we had to cut a tree down, right, a two-man saw, no such thing as etc. One time I had a toothache. And instead of my going back and get stuff, all of a sudden they sent somebody there, somebody up where we were, and they didn't have anything electric. So what they did, there was somebody there that went like this here, and then gave you a temporary.
Oh, okay. Well. What was it like when you traveled from Le Havre over to the German border? Where did you stay, and how was food?
We never stood at any place. We always stood on a half track.
You stayed on the half track itself.
Yeah.
That's where you slept and everything.
There was no such thing as getting a shower. No such thing as doing anything. You stayed in the shower and you kept right on going.
What about food? Was it just cold?
What's that?
Was it just cold K rations, or did they have?
Well, there were K rations most of the time,
Yeah.
etc. But if we were in train in the backs, etc., sometimes we got food. Yeah.
Okay. What type of weapons did you have? I know you had all kinds of equipment for doing engineering jobs.
Yeah.
But what kind of a weapon did you have?
We had, well, for the engineering part of it, what equipment came from the base command, etc., because they had all the equipment there. So if you needed this bridge, you would the rocket truck would come over. We didn't. Each combat command didn't have their stuff. You just call back and you got it. Anyway, so the first, our biggest battle was Hillsdale. Hillsdale, was the last foray of the Germans, etc. They tried. We were on the 7th Army and the 3rd Army, and they came in between, and they tried to come in between us and go out. And the 10th Suspenser Group had the best of everything. Mm-hmm. You know, our tanks couldn't. The tanks were not as good as their tanks, but they had the 65-ton tanks, I forget the name of it, etc., and you couldn't touch those. You know, so we were always afraid of getting up and that equipment, and the Germans.
So this is January of 1945, and you're in Alsace, and I think the Battle of Hildesheim was
our first big battle,
and that was right below Colmar, which is not far from the Rhine. And what did you do from there on? What happened?
All of a sudden we were building threadways over the canals, because we were going forward, they were coming at us, etc. And and first thing, we were building a canal there, and Captain says to me, "We're going to go there, so we will protect our group, etc." And I'm walking there. We're not walking. I'm walking fast, etc. And all of a sudden, swish! Coming, it was the artillery came through, and and I twisted around. I was never scared so much in my life as I was at that point. You know, where I crawled to where I was, and then we call back for artillery for our artillery, etc. And the first one falls near us, and then everything else went through, etc. Now, anyway,
those are 88 millimeter shells you stated.
Yeah,
88s,
yeah.
which are
Well, the 88 they could use for aircraft. They can use for fighting, and they can use it for
tanks too, right?
For tanks against tanks,
Yeah.
etc. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you mentioned a story about how you got to the front line and they told you everything in front of you was the enemy.
Oh, yeah.
What do you tell us about that?
The next morning, and we were very tired working, building the threadways, etc. And so we're sleeping. All of a sudden, you get tapped on the shoulder. You wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. You're going in as infantry because our infantry was lost, etc. And so we go to the tanks and we get mortar shells around us, etc. And and they said everything in front of you is enemy, etc. So all of a sudden we see soldiers coming towards us in white parkas, right? Because we're in the middle of snow. It was the coldest time in history in Europe, etc. Anyway, and we're going, and like, remember I said we're well trained? We're well trained. You don't start shooting until somebody says, okay, somebody gave an order, etc. And all of a sudden our tanker called over and says, hold it, they're our own. There are the missing infantry that went out to come back. And you know how they got the white parkas for snow? They were in the houses, got white sheets, put a hole in it.
Wow.
So anyway, back going back to a bit time, etc. Going back to when we came back from when I started working. One time we were in the lunchroom, and we had 3 divisions: medical, dental, and industrial.
This is where you were working.
So we had we sat in there, and we go in there, and we have lunch, and a few of us talked about etc. So I said, "What are you doing this weekend?" He says, "I'm going to my company reunion." I said, "What out for you?" He says, "I was on 12th Armored." I said, what combat commander? Combat commander? I was in combat commander, etc. And so I gave him the story of etc. He was one of them.
He was one of the guys coming out of the woods?
Yeah.
Wow. What a coincidence.
I had a lot of times in life where something came up. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. This was called Operation Northwind. That the Germans
Operation Northwind was the big operation from the Nazi side. Yeah, but the SS didn't take out. They were well trained. They were better than we were, etc. And and the history books would say that we lost that operation. I say we won because they never got through us.
This was at the same time as the Battle of the Bulge, except it was further south.
Yeah,
down the Rhine.
it was the last.
Up in Belgium, right?
Yeah, it was the last foray that they started coming through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. What happened, how did you end up in the hospital?
Oh, even when Anthony came back, we still stayed with them, etc. And a mortar shell came out to my left side, what I call it, and I just got hit on the shoulder. And it was a lucky wound. It took me out of the fighting for 2 weeks.
Okay.
Because after 2 weeks, I'm a very fast healer, etc. But I would go to somebody there, said, I want to be back in my own outfit. I don't want to be transferred to as an irreparable, we used to call it, etc. I want to go back. So they say, if you want to go back within the area, because right down the battle buzz was over, etc. And anyway, and so I got back in time that we crossed the Rhine, and we were transferred then to we were loaned out to Tappan to go over the Rhine, etc.
Can I ask you one question? You got a Purple Heart for being wounded in battle.
Yeah.
When did they give you the Purple Heart? In the hospital or
in the hospital?
In the hospital.
And think about this. So the Red Cross was there. And can we help you? I said, send this home for me. Guess what? 2 weeks later, what do you call it? I got it in my mail in the company.
So they sent it to you. Okay,
Anyway.
so you said you went across the Rhine and then you were assigned to General Patton's group?
No, General Patton borrowed our division. We were in the 7th, etc. And we had to take all the markings off our vehicles because, and we were, oh, by the way, back in Hildesheim, the General von Rundstedt said, we would call them the suicide division. We went against all that stuff like that. Now, when we crossed the Rhine, we got a nickname, the mystery division, because nobody saw what we had. The reason for that is that when you went through, whoever went through saw who you were, told the enemy who was coming through, etc. And we shot through. But there's where we were trained for high speed. We high speeded right through everything, and a lot of times the high speed was overnight, and nobody knew who we were coming. At times, what they was thinking about is their own troops are coming through. Right, because in the middle of the night, etc. Well, we were coming through, so that was a great thing for us. And we shot all the way up through to Würzburg, where the British just about bombed out the city, saturated bombed them with there were 5,000 deaths.
Wow.
And they blew, and then they had the bridges built. They blew the bridges, etc. We come up there, and so we call back for a Bailey Bridge, etc. And the Brockway trucks came right up, put it out, etc. And the good thing about it is that there was the road was strong all the way up there. It was past, so we couldn't build a bridge and put it up. If there was a turn, we couldn't do it, etc. So that's why we lucked out. Anyway, so and the bridge was built by hand. There was no such thing as somebody carrying up every piece of the bridge. So it took 6 people to bring that in and put it and then lock it in, etc. It's like a rector set. There are a lot of people who said you can't build a bridge by hand, and I got pictures of it that how it was done.
They're prefabricated sections that you bring in.
It was a rector set. Mm-hmm. And it's a Bailey Bridge. And the Bailey Bridge was designed by the British in 1940. Anyway, and he was knighted because we all the branches used it. The British used it, we used it, etc. And okay, and in 24 hours, we were getting our light equipment through. in 48 hours, we were getting our tanks across, 35-ton tanks. But I never knew, and I made the sign that goes on the bridge, etc. Because that was my artwork. They knew that, etc. And so we put a sign there, class 40 at that. And I never knew what class 40 went. A couple of years ago, I was going through my, etc. I was looking on the internet, the Bailey Bridge, and I know why. Our tanks were 35 tons. Their Churchill had was 40 tons, and that's how. You got to put that together.
Tell us a story of how you went down to Dillingen and the bridge there.
Again, right from there, we went high speed all the way down to Dillingen's Bridge, etc. We caught the bridge before they blew it. Now we never knew why they didn't blow it, etc. And somebody says, "Oh, they probably get orders," and because we came up overnight right into the bridge, and then we had to take 9,000 pounds of TNT out of etc. And that's where when they tried to come through and with aircraft that hit us, etc. It's the first time they used the new planes.
The jet,
the first jets.
Yes.
Their first jets. And but one thing about the jets, everything was bombed out, etc. So you know what they use for runways? The Autobahn.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Anyway, then from then on we drove all the way down to, again, speed was important. We went all the way down to Landsberg, where they had the death camp, etc. I never knew the size of the death camp till about a year ago when I saw a picture of it. Fantastic. And fortunately, we didn't go into all the way into it because everybody said that the tanks went all the way into it, and the tanks saw the worst of it.
I read that Landsberg was a sub-camp of Dachau, which was outside Augsburg.
But I was amazed on how big it was.
So you didn't go in, but you saw people that were coming out?
We went in part way.
Oh, okay.
But because different sections want to go in, and but the smell of burning flesh was
something you never forget, I'm sure. Where did you go from there?
Well, then the war was over.
Okay.
Fortunately, it was over.
So this was May of 1945?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, this is, May, right, yeah. And then guess where? Then we were billeted back in Dillingen,
Okay.
etc. Yeah.
So then you were Army of Occupation for a
right.
short while.
With the Army of Occupation, so then we went to places. We had a nice time going into towns and stuff like that, and we were welcomed.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, and all of a sudden somebody taps you on the shoulder and says, "By the way, you're just transferred to the 2nd Infantry for Japan." Because they all took all the young ones, and especially the ones that enlisted. And here I was. I came back, and I had a sword and a sample, and I had a bird, etc. We get to where we leave Le Havre, etc.
You went back to Le Havre to leave to come back to the States?
We had to come back and etc. And we at that time they couldn't get enough ships to ship people. Right. Guess what we were shipped on? $10,000 Liberty ship.
So you were.
and then they were we were sick all the way, and we were a couple of days.
Okay, so it's July 1945. You've just shipping back to the U.S. and this was the end of the war.
No, just before this is the Stars and Stripes for the day the war was over, right? And if you notice that, everybody had our squad signed it, etc. So that's a terrific thing for me. Then, and this is a picture of our squad.
And were you with the guys in that squad the whole time?
This is me over here.
Oh, right at the top of the pile. Yeah. So, what did you find out about on the way back to New York?
When we bought, just before we bought the ships coming back, you had to hand in any guns or anything you bring it back. So I did what I was told. It's pretty good. Half of the people, they took the gun home with them. So then we were sick as a dog most of the way, etc. A couple of days before we landed, they dropped down a bomb. All of a sudden, everything turned to gold. And it was and no more sickness, no more anything. So we landed back in New York, and then I went to Fort Dix for recuperation leave, 2 weeks, etc. And I give my girlfriend a call. She says, "Where are you?" I said, "Back in the States, etc." This was Saturday morning. I said, "This afternoon you go to the priest, etc. You get married next Sunday." So we had practically everything everybody has today. She had a wedding gown, right? Her sisters were milliners. So what they did, they took one that got married before, put it on her.
That's great. So you were married a week after you got back?
Yeah.
And then you had to still go back?
No, then we went to Camp Fed, Texas, where we were going to discharge from, but because they couldn't discharge everybody overnight.
Yeah.
So we went there, and we got out, and
Says you got out in October of 1945.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly 3 years.
Yeah. And were you a private first class, or what was your
Private first class.
Private first class. That's great. Guido, when you look back on your service during World War II, what do you take away from that? What's the most significant thing that you feel that it did for you?
I never get a thought.
Yeah.
I never look back.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So after the war, you worked in the medical field?
Yeah, I came back to the company, and I left here with the industrial division making the blades, but because of my artwork, they said, okay, how about trying to do working with the medical group, etc. And we're only 35 people, and the whole etc. was so small. So I had a German boss who came out of the dental group and wanted to build this up. Anyway, okay, I had to work at every single job in the company for the first year before I got started with it. And then I got started, and all of a sudden the foreman would say, this is a problem. I solved the problem for him because I had vision, etc. One time, the foreman comes to me and says, our grinders are too slow, because we had dental grinders, because that's where it came from. So I looked at it, etc., and I got a salesman in. They had a grinder that was working on a lathe, right, which is 42,000 RPM. We were doing 23, and so I get the assistant foreman for the group that checks everything. So I said, if we get this machine, can you rebuild the section that we need onto the stuff like that, and the grinder? He said, sure, we can do it. So I ordered the equipment, and my boss signed on everything. He never questioned it. And
So Guido,
Yeah.
let me just go back to the military. You told me that you started to go to reunions for the 12th Armored Division.
what's that?
You said you go to the reunions
Oh, no,
of the 12th
no,
Armored
they had
Division?
reunions. I never went to a reunion for the first 70 years.
Yeah, the first 70 years.
70 years, I decided I'll try it out.
Yeah.
And that was in Texas because they had fortunately we had a museum that the town was so happy to help us set up. And since then I've gone. The next year I went to Atlanta, and this year in July we're going to Colorado, Denver. Yeah.
Okay, for the reunions. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've lived in Hillsdale 45 years.
Yeah.
I believe that. That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
In �74, and now it's 2019, whatever that is.
And how many children and grandchildren do you have?
I have two. I have a son and daughter.
Mm-hmm.
My son, when I put my kids through parochial schools,
Yes.
etc. And when my son was going to go to college, he changed his mind, and he went he became a Holy Cross brother. Yeah, yeah. My daughter, and I had the money ready for his college, so I invested it. and my daughter, she went to college, etc. But she got a scholarship.
Oh, good.
So,
And how many grandchildren do you have?
two grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
And one great-grandchild.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Big-
And my kids turned out fantastically well. My grandkids are doing fabulous. Yeah.
Oh, that's
My
great.
granddaughter is a VP.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, Guido, I want to thank you for your service to
Yeah.
our country.
Yeah.
Your story is a marvelous story of
Yeah.
service
Yeah.
during a time of war,
Yeah.
and I hope that future generations can see this video and learn about the sacrifice you made.
Yeah.
Thank you and congratulations.